Hello, I'm Matt Jones with Woodard Curran. For years, companies have written annual reports focused on corporate social responsibility, or CSR. These reports would emphasize important issues that were championed by internal employee groups or external customer groups, but were not necessarily centered on core business identities and strategy in the company. Recently, qualitative CSR programs have been shifted to more quantitative programs devoted to environmental, social, and governance, or ESG issues. What CSR goals hinted at, ESG goals crystallized, and established approaches to track progress. Where CSR reports offered narratives, ESG reports offered actionable data. This doesn't mean a shift away from the issues that CSR programs emphasized, but more a recognition of return on investment found in ESG programs. Things like operational efficiency, risk management, stakeholder engagement, and customer loyalty. To that end, financial powers like Bloomberg and BlackRock have been pushing for common standards to ESG programs, requiring climate change scenario planning for all future investments, and regulatory pressures building for increased ESG reporting based on widespread acceptance of the UN Compact and the Paris Accord. In the shift from CSR to ESG, companies are identifying projects to hit their goals, defining strategy for disclosure, and analyzing data to improve. It's an active time for sustainability teams, but the shift from CSR to ESG is bringing with it benefits that are motivating more and more companies like yours to bank on that shift.
Hi, I'm Rick Love. So it's been about 30 years since the UN Environmental Summit in Rio triggered the first wave of corporate environmental reporting. And since that time, environmental reporting changed and became corporate social responsibility reporting, which changed and became corporate sustainability reporting. And what we now see is corporate environmental, social, and governance reporting. Now, the good news is that there was a wild west during a lot of that time where you never were quite sure what standards should be followed, what data really were going to be required. But recent research has demonstrated that there really has been a strong acceptance of a couple of primary standards for reporting as practiced around the world. About 80 to 90% of companies report some kind of ESG reporting, and they typically use the Global Reporting Initiative GRI standard, standards associated with SASB, ISO, and then on climate-related reporting, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, TCFD, has emerged as the leading guidance for corporate climate-related reporting. Regardless of what standard you use and what format you use, you really do need to attend to some basics. First is governance. You have to be clear on how ESG and risks and opportunities are managed in your organization, reviewed by senior executives, and incorporated into company business strategy. The breadth of your coverage needs to be as broad as you can provide. You want to cover as much of the organization as possible, including your supply chain. And then you really have to pay a lot of attention to data quality. There's an increasing review of data by regulators and investors. And of course, data quality, including third-party data quality assessments, is essential.
As environmental, social, and governance reporting continues to evolve, environmental justice is emerging as a topic of increasing interest. Although it has not historically been considered an ESG topic, the two are inextricably linked. EPA defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Environmental justice communities are typically defined based on census data for key factors, including income, racial identity, and primary language. ESG reporting is the disclosure of data describing a company's impact on the earth and its people. Environmental justice sits squarely at the intersection of E, S, and G. A new executive order requires government agencies to make achieving environmental justice part of their missions by developing programs to address disproportionately high and adverse human health and environmental impacts on disadvantaged communities. New regulations are requiring companies proposing projects in environmental justice areas to engage stakeholders early on. Changes to projects may be necessary to address inequities and stakeholder feedback. As environmental justice impacts start to influence decision-making, the topic may become material enough to merit inclusion in ESG reports. Companies will need to look at ESG through a different lens. A good way to start is to take advantage of available mapping tools to evaluate facility locations relative to environmental justice census tracts. Taking a proactive approach may put companies in a more competitive position if and when ESG frameworks incorporate environmental justice.
Hello, I'm Matt Jones with Woodard Curran. In a world of expanding environmental, social, and governance, or ESG programs, one challenge facing many ESG teams is how to habitually improve what they're already doing. 2 quick thoughts to keep the flywheel spinning for your ESG and sustainability team. First, grab the high-hanging fruit. Many teams like yours that have started well may have already exhausted the low-hanging fruit for efficiencies. The higher-hanging fruit will be harder to reach for, but will be critical to grab. Regular and ongoing sustainability treasure hunts for energy, water, and carbon reductions keep your team focused on catching processes and equipment that utilize excessive resources. These hunts also promote a consistent culture of innovation and conservation at multiple levels of your organization. Number 2, emphasize all ROI. One of the keys to keep your ESG team motivated and your leadership invested is to emphasize the return of investment your program is already making, and not just in terms of net revenue, but in the many dimensions of benefit that a successful ESG program has. Recent study of the market has found sublayers of improvement that organizations typically find through their ESG and sustainability programs. Things like internal risk management, supply chain relations, all can see positive ROI. The sales and marketing teams of companies with thoughtful ESG programs can see enhanced media coverage and greater customer loyalty. And companies invested in ESG and sustainability can expect improved stakeholder engagement and employee satisfaction. All these are ROIs that, if your program emphasizes, will drive perpetual value and keep your program improving for years to come.